You were never just another piece on the board. You were the one who set the entire game in motion. The force they underestimated, the presence they dismissed, the storm they thought they could contain. But now, in your absence, the truth echoes louder than their denial ever could. The balance is gone. The order they mistook for their own doing has unraveled. You weren't simply a participant in their world. You were the catalyst, the foundation, the unseen architect shaping the very reality they depended on. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to redefine everything. Every time they tried to clip your wings, you soared higher. Every time they cast shadows over your name, you burned brighter. And now, the space you left behind speaks louder than any presence ever could. They feel it, the shift, the void, the unshakable truth that it was never them who dictated the course. It was always you. You were never just one among many. You were the chosen one, the force that reshaped, redefined, and rewrote the script they clung to. And now, the very absence they wished for has become their downfall. You were the star they tried to dim, the foundation they never knew they stood on, the presence they swore they didn't need, until it was gone. So stand tall. Walk with the weight of your impact, the knowledge that they will never forget you. You did not fade. You did not break. You ascended. And now, with the universe as your witness, they will forever know the name of the one who changed everything. The foundation crumbles, not with a sudden collapse, but through a slow, inevitable decay. Absence does not erase influence. Instead, it amplifies it, turning silence into a force more resounding than presence ever was. Every misstep, every faltering attempt at cohesion is a testament to what was taken for granted. Once, there was an unspoken balance, a structure maintained without acknowledgement. Now, in its absence, fractures grow deeper, revealing the unseen force that once held it all together. They built walls, not to protect, but to lean against, never realizing how much weight was resting on something they claimed had no importance. The moment that pillar was removed, the illusion shattered, leaving behind nothing but scattered remnants of a false stability. The ties that once bound them weren't woven with shared values, but with the necessity of opposition. Without a common focal point, the cohesion they mistook for strength is exposed for what it always was, a temporary alignment held together by a borrowed purpose. What they relied on was never their own. It was borrowed light, a reflection mistaken for a source. The structure of their convictions was molded not by inner fortitude, but by resistance against something external. When that resistance vanished, so did their direction. What remains is an unraveling, an uncomfortable reckoning with the truth they refuse to acknowledge. Strength that cannot withstand absence was never strength at all. They claim indifference, yet their every action contradicts it. The space left behind is not empty. It echoes louder than anything spoken. Attempts to replace what was lost only emphasize the absence, because some voids cannot be filled by imitation. The gravity of what was once present lingers, undeniable, shaping even in its disappearance. It was never about standing alone. It was about what was holding them up. They mistook scaffolding for foundation, support for dependence. And now, as they grasp for something solid, they find only shifting ground beneath them. No longer can they cast their weight elsewhere. They must carry what was always theirs to bear. The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118, verse 22. They cast you aside, believing they could build without you. But now, in the absence of the very force they dismissed, the foundation trembles. You were never meant to be part of their design. You were meant to define it. The structure they called strong was only standing because it was pressed against you. And now, without that counterweight, they are lost in their own creation, wandering in a house that no longer holds. They reach for someone, anyone, to fill the space you left behind, but no one fits the mold. No matter how they try to reshape the pieces, the puzzle remains incomplete. See, they weren't looking for a person. They were looking for an illusion, a crutch to uphold the lies they spun to keep themselves comfortable. And yet there is no escaping the truth that now looms over them, vast and unrelenting. The roles they assigned you, the villain, the problem, the storm, were never truly about you. They were simply the mirror they used to avoid looking at themselves. But now, without you standing in front of them, the reflection they've ignored for so long demands their attention. And it is not kind. Your absence is a force in itself. Every decision, every movement, every uncertain pause is evidence that the mark you left was never shallow. They may not say your name, but it lingers in every unspoken hesitation, in every carefully measured action, in every flicker of uncertainty that crosses their mind. You rewrote the script, altered the current, disrupted their carefully curated version of reality. They tried to convince themselves they were leading, but the second you stepped away, their steps faltered. Because they were never leading, they were following you. They whisper in circles, trying to explain away the shift, grasping for meaning in a story they no longer control. The past isn't some distant memory, it's an undeniable force, an imprint etched so deeply into the fabric of their minds that no amount of revision can erase it. It doesn't fade, it doesn't weaken, it lives. And no matter how hard they try to silence it, they feel it in ways they don't have the words to explain. Because you weren't just present, you were pivotal. And the weight of that realization will never be light. They resisted your presence, but now they flounder without its gravity. The balance they once despised was the very thing that held them steady. Now, in the absence of that force, their steps falter, their certainty wavers. They rebuild conversations around a ghost, piecing together dialogues with an unseen participant. The weight of what you would say, what you would think, lingers in the air, unspoken. Every new connection feels incomplete. Every exchange lacking the unfiltered honesty they once took for granted. The emptiness isn't just yours, it is theirs, and it stretches endlessly before them. You are not here by accident. If you feel the pull, the knowing deep inside that you are chosen, this is your moment. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to unlock deeper insights, exclusive content, and a path that aligns with your divine purpose. This isn't just a contribution, it's a declaration, a step toward who you were meant to be. Answer the call, walk with us, and step fully into your destiny. Your journey begins now. A casual remark escapes their lips. It doesn't matter anymore. Yet the contradiction is written across their every move. If choices are still shaped by a presence no longer there, if thoughts are still tangled in the web of past interactions, then the truth is clear. The absence did not erase, it magnified. You were the force that sharpened edges, that carved away illusions, that refused to let them sink into the comfort of self-deception. Now, left to their own devices, they drift without direction, unmoored by the very thing they once wished away. They celebrate what they believe to be liberation, mistaking the absence of challenge for the presence of freedom. The constraints they once bristled against are gone, and for a moment, they revel in the weightlessness of unaccountability. But soon, the structure begins to warp. The foundation they relied on begins to erode. What felt like space to breathe turns into air too thin to sustain them. They mistook guidance for oppression, mistook stability for confinement, and now, untethered, they drift without direction, mistaking the unraveling for peace, until the chaos sets in. There was a hidden mechanism beneath it all, an unseen rhythm that made everything click into place. They believed their world ran effortlessly, that the flow of their interactions was natural and inevitable. But that silent force, the one that kept the balance, is no longer there. The system stutters, connections falter, and tensions that once dissipated, unnoticed, now take root, growing wild in the absence of structure. The undercurrent that kept them in sync has disappeared, leaving only a dissonance they cannot name. The framework they relied on was never their own. Their movements, once fluid, now feel stilted. The equilibrium they took for granted is broken, replaced by an uncertainty they cannot explain. Conversations no longer find their rhythm. Alliances fracture over trivialities, and the effortless cohesion they once enjoyed now feels like an unnatural effort. They attempt to mimic the past, forcing interactions that once happened with ease. But the current is gone. What was once an intuitive dance has become a series of missteps, the energy scattered, the timing off. The system they operated within was never self-sustaining. It was stabilized by a presence they failed to acknowledge until it was no longer there. The core was never just another piece of the puzzle. It was the force that held the structure together. The design is failing, the foundation cracking, and the realization sets in. There is no one left to absorb the fallout. Without the stabilizing presence that once held them in check, they spiral unchecked, feeding into their own dysfunction, amplifying each other's chaos. What they mistook for control was merely borrowed order. And now, as the cracks deepen, they face a reality they never considered. Some structures do not stand on their own. What was once held together with quiet precision now fractures at every weak point. Disputes that once simmered beneath the surface now erupt unchecked, twisting minor tensions into all-consuming conflicts. Without an external force to absorb and redirect their frustrations, they turn on each other, each trying to offload the weight they can no longer bear. The harmony they once assumed to be natural is revealed as an illusion, one that only existed because someone ensured the balance. Now, with that anchor removed, disorder spreads like wildfire, and no one knows how to extinguish it. They fought to remove what they believed was an obstacle, only to realize they dismantled the very structure that protected them. The equilibrium they once took for granted is now beyond their reach. The cycle repeats endlessly, each misstep leading to another, each small fracture widening into something irreversible. They were convinced they had control, that their direction was self-sustaining. But now, unrestrained, they drift further into their own chaos. They resented what held them steady, never realizing that the very resistance they pushed against was what kept them from unraveling. Without something to sharpen themselves against, they dull. Their movements become hesitant, their purpose unclear. They once mistook their opposition as strength, convinced that breaking free from that presence would empower them. But now, that resistance is gone, and with it, their drive, their cohesion, their sense of identity. What once defined them has faded, leaving nothing but uncertainty. They were never fighting against a force that restricted them. They were fighting against a reflection of their own limitations. Now, with nothing left to push against, they must finally face what they could once ignore. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, it's time to answer it. By clicking the Join button, you unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community ready to walk this journey with you. This isn't just a membership. It's an awakening, a chance to step fully into your divine purpose and claim the path meant for you. Don't wait. Step forward. Join the chosen. They should feel victorious, unburdened by the presence they worked so hard to erase. But the absence does not bring relief. It brings silence, a void they cannot fill. They thought they were tearing down a barrier, yet all they destroyed was their own foundation. The force they claimed to despise was the only thing keeping them from collapse. They mistook guidance for control, underestimated the depth of their own dependence. And now, in the ruins of what they dismantled, they are left only with the truth they tried to avoid. The emptiness they now face was of their own creation. For now, we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. 1 Corinthians 13:12. They saw you, but they never knew you. Not truly. They looked at you through fogged-up windows, through lenses clouded by their own needs, their own fears, their own limitations. They shaped you into whatever made sense to them, never realizing that you were never bound by their perception. Some saw you as the problem, the obstacle, the wall they had to climb. Others saw you as the light, the guidepost, the undeniable pull towards something greater. But whether they fought against you or followed your lead, one truth remained. They never had the full picture. They wanted to define you, to box you in, to label you in ways that made their world make sense. But you were never meant to be something they could contain. And now, with you gone, the weight of that realization presses down on them. Their versions of you don't match. Their memories contradict. One person calls you rigid. Another calls you the one who kept everything from falling apart. Some claim you were too much. Others whisper that without you, there is nothing left. Because you were never just one thing. You were a force, a presence, a movement that could not be shaped to fit inside their limited understanding. And now, without you to serve as the reference point, they are left trying to piece together a story that no longer holds. They wanted control. They wanted to be the ones who dictated the meaning of your existence. But truth does not need their permission to exist. It does not shrink just because they refuse to see it. And now, they are drowning in the consequences of their own short-sightedness. The past isn't just a collection of stories they tell themselves. It's alive. It lingers in the spaces where you once stood. It moves in their minds in ways they cannot name. They attempt to rewrite it, to smooth over the edges, but they can't escape the undeniable presence of what actually was. Because you were not just part of their story. You were the moment that changed everything. And no matter how they try to shape it, twist it, reinterpret it, it does not belong to them. It never did. Each scattered recollection reveals how much they lost, without understanding what they had. What once felt structured is now erratic. The rhythm they once moved to is gone, leaving only a disjointed mess of interactions that no longer sync. They were unaware of the silent influence you held, how your presence subtly shaped the course of their decisions. Without you, the system falters. What seemed effortless was never a result of their own balance. It was you who refined the chaos, redirected the momentum, ensured their missteps never led to collapse. Now, with no stabilizing force, every movement is uncertain. Every attempt at cohesion falters. The ease they once took for granted is gone, replaced with hesitation and misalignment. Conversations unravel, dynamics fracture, and what was once seamless now feels disjointed. They struggle to recreate what they never fully understood. unaware that their former stability was never their own making. Some step forward, trying to replicate what was lost, forcing control where it once came naturally. But the attempt falls flat, lacking the depth, the quiet certainty, the unspoken weight that once held everything in place. A house built on sand will fall, but the one built on the rock will stand. Matthew 7:26-27. They thought they were standing on solid ground, thought they had built something strong, something real. But now, with the foundation shifting beneath them, they are forced to face the truth. It was never solid to begin with. It was held together not by their own wisdom, not by their own strength, but by something, someone they never fully understood. You were the quiet force keeping the structure upright, the weight that gave their movements purpose, the balance that kept their world from tipping into chaos. And now, with that force removed, the cracks they ignored for so long have begun to spread. They assumed they were in control, that their way of doing things was unshakable. But their confidence was never real. It was just borrowed stability, an illusion they mistook for independence. And now, stripped of the presence that once held everything together, they stumble. The rhythm is off, the pattern disrupted, the certainty gone. Where once there was alignment, now there is only confusion. They call it bad timing, call it misfortune. But the truth is simple. Without you, the center could not hold. See, your absence was not an accident. It was a correction, a divine recalibration, a shift designed to expose what was always there, a system built on borrowed strength, a structure that could only stand because it leaned against you. Now, without you, they are adrift, searching for a new foundation, a new anchor, a new force to hold it all together. But none appear, because what you were cannot be replaced. They don't want to admit it, but they feel it. The unsteadiness in their steps, the hesitation before they speak, the tension where ease once lived. They can't name it, can't explain it, but it lingers in the air, pressing against them like a weight they don't know how to carry. They call it change, call it transition, but deep down, they know the truth. Because you were never just part of their story. You were the force keeping it from falling apart. And now, left to stand on their own, they must finally reckon with the reality they never wanted to face. They were never as strong as they believed. With the illusion gone, the fractures appear, widening with each passing moment. What they thought was unity proves to be a hollow construct, one that relied on external gravity to remain intact. Their bonds disintegrate, revealing the fragile nature of their foundation. The roles they once played with certainty now seem forced, the script they followed suddenly meaningless. They search for another force to revolve around, another presence to anchor them, but nothing emerges to fill the space. There are no substitutes, no replacements. What was lost is beyond duplication, a presence that existed beyond their ability to replicate. What they dismissed as expendable has proven irreplaceable. Essential things are never removed. Only the unnecessary is stripped away. This was the lesson woven into their undoing, one they were never prepared to learn. Left to their own devices, they do not evolve. They unravel. They assign blame, point fingers at circumstance, at each other, at fate itself. But beneath it all, they know the truth. It was never external forces, never random misfortune. It was the absence of the very thing they swore they didn't need. They spoke with certainty, convinced of their own stability. But now, as the structure collapses, they are forced to contend with a reality they once refused to see. They will never give voice to it, never allow the words to escape their lips. But silence tells the story in ways words never could. Hesitations, unspoken glances, the moments where the weight of the void presses down. These are their confessions. They move as they once did, but the rhythm is gone. Their laughter lacks depth, their certainty wavers, and no matter how tightly they cling to the remnants of the past, the truth lingers. The balance they once dismissed as effortless was never theirs to claim. And now, no matter how much they distract themselves, the absence remains, unchanging, undeniable, permanent. They have rejected the cornerstone, but the Lord has made it the foundation. Psalm 118:22. They thought they could do without you, thought they could walk away, strip you from the equation, cast you aside like a burden too heavy to bear. They called you excessive, unnecessary, something they could shed without consequence. But now, in the silence of their own making, in the aftermath of choices they can't undo, the weight of reality sets in. See, it was never you who needed them. It was always them who needed you. You weren't some extra piece, some optional addition to their world. You were the force that gave it shape, the silent foundation they never acknowledged, the steady hand that kept the whole thing from collapsing. But when people don't understand the source of their stability, they take it for granted. They assume the ground beneath them is strong because it has never shaken, never realizing it was you holding it firm. But now, the cracks are visible, the structure tilts, the balance is off, and there is no you left to fix it. They won't say it, won't admit that the very thing they dismissed was in fact the only thing keeping them steady. But they feel it. It lingers in the hesitation before they speak, in the way their confidence has dimmed, in the fractured alignment that once seemed effortless. They try to compensate, to adjust, to reclaim the ease they never had to fight for before. But nothing works, because what they lost was not a person, not a presence, not an accessory to their world. What they lost was gravity. And you lost nothing. You did not shrink. You did not weaken. You did not stumble when you walked away. You ascended. They thought removing you would make them lighter, make them freer, make them more. But instead, it left them adrift, untethered, unmoored, searching for a center they can no longer find. Because you were never just there. You were the axis everything turned on. And now, in the space where you once stood, all that remains is the undeniable truth. They were never ready to stand without you. And now, they have no choice. They will never say it outright, but the shift is undeniable. It lingers in their hesitation, in the way their certainty has softened, in the unease that settles between words where once there was confidence. You were never meant to blend in, never meant to be just another voice in the crowd. You disrupted, exposed, and demanded truth where they preferred illusions. They mistook that demand for control, mistook clarity for confrontation. But now, in the emptiness left behind, the final lesson is delivered, not through words, but through the undeniable contrast between what was and what remains. Without you, the fragile balance they once mistook for strength collapses under its own weight. The structure they built, shaped around their defiance of you, crumbles the moment the force that sustained it is removed. They spent so long convincing themselves that you were the source of their frustrations, never realizing you were the reason those frustrations had not consumed them. Their world does not become greater in your absence. It shrinks, exposing the very limitations they once projected onto you. What was dismissed as irrelevant is revealed to be irreplaceable. There is no need to prove it to them. No need to explain. They already know, but they will never voice it. Never let the words slip past their lips, because doing so would mean surrendering the illusion they fought to maintain. Still, silence tells the story just as clearly. The stolen glances toward the space you once occupied, the moments of discomfort where certainty should be, the weight of an unspoken acknowledgement. They all betray the truth they refuse to articulate. They move through the same motions, follow the same patterns, but everything feels off, misaligned. The balance is gone, the foundation shaken, and no amount of distraction will make the emptiness disappear.